For the healthcare and wellness track, we're speaking with Heather Bucalos of 18 Loop. They're part of the panel Virtual Reality Therapy and Family Intervention Research Findings and Practical Recommendations. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Can you please tell us about who you are and what you do in the metaverse?
Sure, my name is Heather Bucalos, and I'm a registered nurse. I'm also a two-time cancer survivor. And the second time I went through cancer treatment, I used virtual reality during my own treatment, and it really improved my treatment experience. So now I'm an advocate of virtual reality for healthcare. And my main goal is to advocate the use of VR for cancer patients specifically, as well as other patients and some of the older. Just scratch that. Sorry.
Can you actually tell me a little bit about what that experience was that you had in your own treatment that got you interested in and advocating for this kind of technology in your work now?
Sure. So when I went through cancer treatment the first time, I experienced a lot of pain and discomfort. And when I went back to work, I ended up starting to teach Lamaze classes. And we did so much of the meditation and breathing exercises and focal points and mindfulness in Lamaze that I thought, why couldn't we take some of what we're teaching in Lamaze and transfer it to pain management for other types of patients? And I thought back to my experience during my cancer treatment. And around that same time, I discovered Google Cardboard for the first time. And so I started thinking, oh, what if we put Lamaze into VR? And then we distributed that modality to other patients, like cancer patients or patients who are dealing with chronic pain scenarios. So that marriage of those three items really came together. And I started researching and finding companies who were already doing this. And then around the same time, I ended up being diagnosed with cancer a second time. And I actually used that idea for my own treatment. And I thought, well, this is the perfect time to try it out.
So you actually brought that idea of VR meditation and mindfulness during your treatment to that second round of treatment that you needed to go through?
Yeah, so I reached out to a virtual reality company who was already working in the space, and I was lucky enough to be able to try their headset and their program. I brought it to the hospital with me. I also brought my neighbor's Oculus Go with me to the hospital. And so there I was sitting in the hospital bed trying out these virtual experiences and swimming under the ocean while I was actually in the hospital. And I would share VR with my doctors who would come in. And it really gave me, there were two benefits to this. One was it was something that I could focus on besides my illness. So it was something new to me and I could explore it and I could try new things and figure out if this was going to work for me and maybe if it would work for other people. And at the same time, I was evangelizing it as a patient and sharing it with my providers. And then, of course, the benefits of virtual reality were that I was distracted from the pain that I was experiencing due to treatment side effects. And I was able to immerse myself in pleasant experiences like swimming with the dolphins or being on a beach in Portugal and have the sun shining down on me. Meanwhile, I was actually in the hospital in the middle of winter in Buffalo, New York for 30 days straight on a locked unit. So there really were a lot of benefits for me to use VR in my experience.
What a empowered and resourceful patient. I am impressed with your curiosity during that difficult process, and so cool to hear you advocating for it and teaching in the midst of your own treatment. Wow.
Well, I have to thank my background as a nurse because I think in both scenarios, that's really what got me through the treatment process, but also to be able to evangelize something like a new treatment. I really fell back on my nursing training and to experiment and try different things. And as a nurse, I had always tried, I think pain management was my biggest focus for patients, like their comfort. And so for me, in my own experience, I just took my professional experience of providing comfort relief and gave that to myself.
I am so impressed. Moving on a little bit more lightheartedly, how often are you in the metaverse and what do you do there these days?
So I'm in the metaverse a lot more often when I'm with my grandfather. Otherwise, I would say maybe about once a week for myself. But the majority of my time is spent evangelizing and advocating for other people to get into the metaverse for the very first time and to explore the benefits of virtual reality and to discover the metaverse for the first time themselves.
Thank you so much. Is there a big idea that you're hoping to share with your AWE audience this year at AWE 2022?
Sure. So, what's the big idea? The big idea is if a virtual reality headset could talk, it would say, "Why don't you try me for this scenario? Why don't you try me for your healthcare scenario?" So, I have this talk called "The Voice for Virtual Reality: The Advocate's Role." Like, the big idea is to bring a voice to VR for more than just entertainment purposes, to advocate for virtual reality to benefit the healthcare industry.
hmm I love, Heather, the idea of being an advocate for the technology that's there to show you that it's more than just the technology. It's more than just that first use case that you've seen, but there are ways that we can use this in our lives in meaningful ways with our parents, with our kids, that has impact beyond just being a viewer of something. Being That's amazing. So similarly, is there anything that you're hoping to learn this year at the expo?
I'm definitely hoping to get my hands on some haptics gloves or to be able to experience haptics. So, smell and haptics with VR is probably something that I'm very curious about. And I would love to just be a sponge when I get there and absorb as much information as I can.
I don't know how we did it, but we are at the speed round. So the next question is, do you have a metaverse avatar? And if so, what does it look like?
Yes, I do have a metaverse avatar. She looks very similar to me. I did not get too creative with her, but pretty sure she has brown eyes, brown hair, and a pink shirt on with a gray blazer. And that's as basic as it gets.
Was there a reason or a driving force for you to choose to go sort of realistic and representational rather than jump into the endless possibilities with your avatar?
Probably because my creative outlet lies in other areas. So I wanted people to be able to remember who I was in the metaverse and in the universe. So I wanted people to be able to remember who I am and not get distracted or not forget who I
I love
am.
this idea though, right? Like where as a nurse and as somebody who is caring for people in virtual environments and in physical environments, right? Or who is using VR and XR in a professional sort of advocacy way, there's a strong need, right, for you to have that persistence and that consistency. Where if your purpose in VR were slightly different, if you're for social reasons or for entertainment or others, the I could see why you might feel more freedom to be different just based on that use case. So it seems totally logical to me.
Yeah, maybe just the congruency so that people recognize me in and out of the metaverse or in and out of real world and the VR world.
One of our last questions here is just the opportunity for you to introduce us to somebody or some buddies who have been meaningful in your journey in the metaverse. Is there anybody that you'd like to shout out to?
Yes, definitely. I'd like to thank Joe, Tom, Denise, and Beth for being my Metaverse mentors, and Josh for helping me to take some of the first steps into VR for healthcare and giving me the bridge to reach virtual reality in the healthcare field.
How amazing to have mentors and guides who can actually bring the metaverse to you in a time of need. Thanks to all of those mentors. That's great. Is there is there anything we missed? Is there anything that you want to make sure that you can share with the AWE audience or anything?
If anybody wants to chat in real life, I'd be happy to make some connections IRL and be happy to chat about my experience using VR as a patient as well as professionally in the healthcare field.
I suspect your dance card is going to be full with that kind of generous offer. This has been Heather Bucalos. She is a board director at 18 Loop and speaking on the healthcare and wellness track at AWE 2022. Heather, thank you so much for your time with us today.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to joining you at AWE.
Love it. For the creator track, we're talking with Will Austin, senior designer of emerging tech at Gannett and USA Today Networks. Will's talk at AWE 2022 is called Growing User Confidence in AR: How UX Can Build Strong Engagement Relationships. Will, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in the metaverse?
Yeah, sure thing. So I am a senior designer at Gannett, as you mentioned. I am working on a lot of the visual ends and story building. So my primary track is leading the transitions from our working with our journalists to translate the stories into mixed reality interactives. So trying to get that empathic engagement, the back and forth communication, bringing that back. It's meant to make things more receptive. I feel like what AR, VR, any other mixed realities, it helps put people in the shoes or in the positions of those moments and gets them to learn for themselves in a way. I know myself very kinesthetic. So I like being able to tinker around and do. That's what gets me to learn better.
Same.
And I really find that as a very powerful way for storytelling. And I think it has a grand place in news.
Oh my goodness. Storytelling, the news, and mixed reality experiences. I'm sure this talk is going to be awesome. One question that we ask everybody is how often are you in the metaverse and what do you do?
I'm in there relatively often is because of the track of the things that we do. We try and create various types of realities and things. A lot of them are historically context. As an example, one of our big projects we worked on was called 1619. We worked with a group called the Slave Wrecks Project. They are a series of divers that try and find better understanding of what happened to ships, vessels, and persons that were trafficked during the Atlantic slave trade, enslavement trade. So we worked with them to get a better understanding of what the ships looked like and built a simulation of it in 3D that you're standing in while we have speakers present a perspective story of the first Africans that were enslaved and brought to the United States and how the tragedy of the enslavement trade started for America. It was a really powerful piece. You know, the idea of occluding the person's environment and putting them in that spot. Thing that made me very inspired of that was the in DC, the National Holocaust Museum. You step in one of the railroad cars, and it is just gut wrenching when you get in that perspective in that spot. And we wanted to bring a museum exhibit to everyone. So we're in these spaces all the time because of the
Yeah.
story we tell.
Oh my goodness. And there's no way that you could tell such a chilling and compelling story with any amount of heart or relatability if you're not really a student of the medium, how it works, and how you can build those interactions and relationships that would work for such a wide audience. That's
Yeah, it's because otherwise you'd have to install an exhibit. It would have to be an exclusive experience. You would have to have the ability to travel somewhere, to go to something, and to be in it in order for that to work. There are, countless museums that tell these stories, but not everybody has the knowledge that they exist or the ability to just go and travel to learn. So, with augmented reality, mixed mediums, we can bring these things to more audiences and be more accessible to them.
Not only making the technology more accessible, but then also making alive and manifest in ways that we've never been able to experience, like literally stories buried at the bottom of the ocean. Wow, super powerful stuff. Moving into the next questions, what's something that you're hoping to share with your audience this year at AWE 2022?
Yeah. So the key goal of this story is how we can continue to grow this audience to get them to better understand. We as AWE, as people in tech, can easily forget that our technology evolves so quickly that a lot of people aren't able to grasp or understand that these things even exist or how to operate them. Each one has a different use because mixed reality can be done in so many different ways. And that's why I think it's contextual. We're
Mhm.
occluding different levels of a person's space, either completely or partially. Being able to make it clear for the user to understand how to operate and how to use the space and understanding what the interaction is will only make this more richer. My goal is to make augmented reality and mixed reality more everyday, more common to that future that we constantly look forward to.
Mhm.
Getting that Star Trek, the Galactic Federation. I want more of that everywhere.
Yeah.
The way that I say it is, I want this tech to be boring because the moment it becomes boring, it's everywhere. Our phones are so normal now. We yell at these magic boxes that can do
Mhm.
all these things. And before, the computers take up entire warehouses and rooms, and we're complaining about these little tiny things that has taken over everything. Everything lives in this.
I love the idea of making XR so ubiquitous it's boring. That's amazing. I was doing a little bit of a thought exercise just earlier this week about the metadata that you need to understand about an XR experience, even just in order to get started with it. Like what platform is it on? What hardware do I need? Does it work with my OS? Does it work with, the speed and the graphics processors that I have? Do I need to sign in? Does it take my app? Right? There's so many of these different questions that you need to know just before you start. I love the idea of making it boring. That's so cool. One thing that you mentioned that is a little novel for me in my thinking about AR, I kind of want to just sidebar on it, is you're talking about how like mixed reality tools occlude certain amounts of the person's environment. And I've often heard this kind of idea about, right, like how immersive do you want to be? How much do you want to add in? But you're kind of thinking about it as how much to show and blend, or even like remove the real world. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about what's the right amount to show or occlude?
Yeah, this whole metaverse conversation has really brought this to the forefront. For me, I think of it the way that people in our tech sphere talk about things of Web 2 and Web 3. Web 2, we're talking about responsive web. How do our pages, our interactive pieces expand to the medium that we're using, be it a desktop, your phone, wearables, handheld devices? When we're talking about mixed reality, it's the same thing. How much are we scaling? Are we consuming the entire world space and replacing it? Are we assisting or facilitating the things around us? Are we facilitating the objects around us or the user? So these are things that we need to consider. There's some big things that need to be solved for this. Like there's not a lot of conversations about the metaverse and ADA compliance. What does the metaverse look like to people with barriers to vision? How do we help that? What is that version of contextualized conversations? When we're talking about mobility use and being able to do things, how do we make sure that we're not leaving people behind in a new interactive space? So these are all things that we need to talk about and consider more as we're starting to build out these things. And what I hope is, as we get in there and start interacting more, we can find better ways for us to communicate and trade with each other. Like you notice, I use my hands and gestures all the time. The thing I think about is everyone shows hand gestures with wearables. What happens when somebody's using ASL and they accidentally open up a contextual screen or something? How are we going to be able to read that? As we start to better understand hand gestures, all boats rise. We're going to get
Hmm.
better interactions, because by making sure that everyone can interact in these spaces, we're going to be able to have more accurate descriptions and conversations with the digital world married to the physical world.
Are there any ideas, or is there anything that you're hoping to encounter or to learn this year at the conference?
Oh, absolutely. I think as part of the big part that we've been talking about here is, how do we get this to expand? We're still very reclusive. We're still very exclusive on these things. You still, you know, you either need to have your own private app or be part of an app infrastructure to be able to interact with a lot of mixed reality things. We have
Mhm.
great technologies like Eighth Wall that are fantastic, but they're not as widespread yet. So I'm always excited to hear more about what's going on. I've really enjoyed listening in on Eight Walls as an example of one of them, Niantic going out there and talking about how they're expanding and getting people interested. It's getting more people and getting it easier for people to get in and experience these things on a quicker base. As we get away from tethered wearables, VR is getting into more just attached onto you and being part of the headset or things. We can be able to move around and be more flexible. That means more people can be able to access it and use it, have a wider space. So I'm very interested in hearing about what everybody's been taking on those challenges and
Mhm.
going forward and seeing what people are bringing to the table on that.
I've heard a lot of questions about interoperability and growth, and it seems like the outputs of your questions are core to both of those. So very cool. So we're in the speed round. Congratulations. Do you have a metaverse avatar? And if so, what does it look like?
Yeah. So the metaverse thing is always tough for me. I don't want to get into heavy semantics or things like that, but for me, I've been in a Web 2 metaverse my whole life. As early as text MMOs and RPGs. I've been role playing as a troll in World of Warcraft since the day it came out. My wife and I got married on a floating island before, with all of our online friends, before we got married in the physical life. I've been a part of this whole
Hmm.
time. This visuals and storytelling is major to me. So what I'm waiting for is seeing more of that lifestyle being built more into this heavier metaverse in that livable part. I've never not been in it. So it's a little tough to, I'm just waiting on that next level. Where does that go for me? And
Hmm.
where does my entertainment value fit in as just a diehard gamer?
You're really looking for that depth as somebody who's very comfortable in these sort of immersed or 360 spaces. That's
Mhm.
super cool. The prompt of, when will XR be boring is also probably when you'll be doing so many workaday things there. That is fantastic. Awesome. So the next question that we have is an opportunity to give a shout out to or introduce us to somebody who has impacted your journey with the metaverse, or point us in the direction of somebody who's been foundational in your understanding of this kind of technology. Is there anybody that you want to call out to?
Yeah, I'll make a big shout out to my former director, Ray Soto. He's a strong visionary. He and I have worked together for a long time. We worked in games and worked in the news. A great storyteller, incredibly inspiring. I would say keep an eye on him. The stuff that he is doing and the direction he is going, I think he's going to be leading the way in a lot of spaces. Also, big shout out to Charlie Fink. I had a lot of conversations with him and our AR pieces and projects. There's been some great dialogue and back and forth there. I love Niantic's talk last year. That was so powerful. I'll be keeping a big eye on them. A lot of interest in the direction they're going, and big shout out to just USA Today and what we're doing here. That they've been supporting us and giving us the room to be able to experiment and expand and try and find ways to reach out to new audiences and get them reinvigorated with journalism.
Yeah, as a storytelling, as an empathy, as a communications medium, I may be biased as a marketer here, but the promise for XR as a communications tool in general, I think is so powerful. Thank you for those generous shouts out. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we missed or anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
As we're getting into the metaverse, we just need to think about it not as a thing that is this far distance piece. We've always had it. We've been merging our digital and physical world more and more and more. Our digital DNA already exists with how much data mining there is on us. It just means of how much more of this space is going to be more digital, more contextual. So keep an eye out and pay attention to the things that are in the past and the future. Trends are always cyclical. We'll just see the next version. Look at interaction, look at things, I think big time. Look at the games industry. They have always been in the forefront and leading things. Look at entertainment. They have been in the forefronts and leading things. So how do we use these inspirations that drive us, that bring us to that utopian future? That idea, I know people love Snow Crash and things like that, but for me, it's Starfleet. I want that future, the one that provides all of us a little bit of an easier direction, something that makes us feel better and moves forward as people.
I love it. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, my timer for this call is running, so we need to wrap it up today. Will Austin, Senior Designer of Emerging Tech at Gannett and USA Today Networks, will be speaking in the creative track. So look forward to talking with you at Augmented World Expo in just a few weeks.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.
For the Startup and Investors track, we're talking with Yolanda Barton, founder of Revere XR. Let's get started. Yolanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, Nathan, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in the metaverse?
Well, my name is Yolanda Barton, and I use VR to preserve memories, right? The things that at the end of the day are most important to us. I preserve our stories and things that we're at jeopardy of losing if we don't preserve them. So I think one of the most important uses we can use VR for is preservation of the things we want to show future generations and the things we want to make sure we value in our society. So what have we learned? What have we been through? Let's share those stories. So I consider myself an immersive storyteller, the immersive storyteller.
Can you tell me, I love that by the way, can you tell me a little bit about how you facilitate the documentation of memories in VR? It sounds very interesting.
Mhm. Well, it really is a two-part process because we have to preserve the stories first. So let's dive into the archive and the memories and let's pull out what needs to be preserved. Let's combine them with the stories that have been told about them. And I don't mean what's in the media, I mean real stories from the root of it. I, for example, preserved a neighborhood in Seattle that's rich with music. It's where Jimi Hendrix was born. It's where Sir Mix-a-Lot became a DJ. It's where Quincy Jones learned about music. It's where Ray Charles came to experience and share music. And there's so many musicians like that. And so now it's time to recreate those experiences and those spaces. So now we're preserving not only the memory, but the geographic space that it took place in.
Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to see more. How often are you in the metaverse and what do you do there?
Oh my gosh. So here's what's so exciting about the metaverse is that we have a future opportunity to create something better that has less divisions than what we're experiencing in the real world today. And if everybody approached it with that concept, we would wake up thinking about the metaverse. We would want to get in the metaverse and build. And that's what I do. So I recently just finished Oculus Launchpad. So I spent a lot of time in the metaverse building this neighborhood. And I'm beginning a world builder program because I care about the future of what worlds are built. So we're building for the now, but we're building for the future too. So what do you want your kids and grandkids to say about us, right? And our family and friends. So I'm looking forward to building really inclusive worlds that make people feel like they have a sense of belonging. People that wouldn't originally show up in spaces, but yet feel comfortable and valued in those spaces. We have an opportunity to thread inclusion into the metaverse, and that is what I'm here to do day and night, honey.
Oh my goodness. I'm actually hosting an on Portland event next week on the 25th that's called Entering XR, Building Identity, Community, and Connection in the Metaverse. And it's a lot
That's
about
my language.
representation, in
Yes,
accessibility,
yes,
interoperability, and we're
yes.
we're diving into it with Caitlin Krause and Dr. Donna Davis, looking at how identity and accessibility relate to avatars and how we're able to show up in different platforms. So
I'm in love with this topic. And how do I get to your event? Seriously.
awesome. I will make sure that you have the meetup link. Please do join the Awe
Yes.
Night Portland meetup group on Meetup. We would also love to talk with you more later on in the
Please,
year.
please, please, yes.
As somebody who's in the startup competition, you've got a lot to share with the judges and investors at Augmented World Expo. Is there a
Yes.
big idea that you're hoping to share with your audience at AWE 2022?
Yes, that's the power to transform how we connect through storytelling, even in VR. I think the real challenge is that a lot of people don't believe that storytelling belongs in VR. So I get the amazing opportunity to transform people's ideas because I'm here to prove that it does. And I have a full proof concept that will change anybody's mind.
I can't wait for a competition. That's going to be fantastic. On the flip side, is there something that you're hoping to learn or experience at the?
I mean, talk about how much wisdom and expert thought leadership is in one room, in one space, at one time. How do I absorb all of that? Like all of it, right? How do I get to be able to see what other people see through their eyes and see how it helps me grow in this industry?
It's
I am here for it. I'll give up sleep so I can meet everyone and speak to everyone and learn from everyone.
the community at AWE is really one of the huge selling points that everyone talks about. So you will be in good company. I'm sure there will be lots of great conversations. We are already in the speed round. Do you have a metaverse avatar? And if so, what does it look like?
Well, I'll be honest, I do have a metaverse avatar. I look forward to helping to shape and grow our concepts of how those avatars can really represent our differences. Because me and a lot of people that play VR that are around me don't really feel like the avatars really do represent us. So I look forward to sharing more ideas about how that can come full round and people can feel more valued and excited about those. But honestly, I do have an avatar. She has braids. She definitely has glasses. The earrings aren't big enough, but they'll do for now.
I was going to ask, are there specific areas in avatar building or creating a metaverse identity where you think there's work to be done? Or
Oh,
where
there's
you
so much work to be done around that. And here's the thing. So I am a consultant. I'm a diversity and inclusion consultant. So I can have this conversation comfortably, right? I have these conversations daily. And it just is a fact. There has to be more differences available than what we currently have
Mhm,
in that world. And whether it's accessories or hair or fashion, right? Or beauty products
mhm.
or whatever it is, to get to the heart of people is a difficult challenge. So I'm it's definitely not easy. There's so many differences amongst all of us, but we want to make people be excited about stepping into this space. And one of the ways you can deter that from happening is to not have representation available at their
Mhm.
fingertips.
As a non-binary person, when I go into the metaverse, I have a very bizarre experience. Even just this morning, I was setting up a VR account, and when I was setting up the account, the developers thought in their forms to offer multiple options for gender. There was male, female, prefer not to answer, non-binary.
Yeah.
But then when I came into the editor and started to make my avatar, there were two. There was male and female. And it was a little surprising to me to have encountered that identity question earlier and then to
Early
have a
on.
different answer
And do you
when
know
we get
why?
into the environment.
Do you know why? Because we've understood that it's politically correct to have the right boxes to fill, but we still haven't gotten to the root of why the differences are important. So there's short term buy in and there's real buy in,
Well,
right?
and what you said just a moment ago really struck me, right? It's not that we have to make it look like everyone precisely, but we need to offer them the ability to share
The
their
rep-
heart with us.
yes, and the representation option has to be available. And there is no short term, what box do we put? You really have to understand why differences can strengthen us to be able to have the forward thinking foresight to know what to include. So if you're just looking for quick answers, you're never really going to meet the need. Consulting company to the world.
Now we have kind of a special question, and it's really the opportunity to introduce us to or give a shout out to somebody who's impacted your journey or learning or experience of the metaverse. Is there anybody that you'd like to introduce us to or say thanks to?
Absolutely. There's so many people, but there are people that I really look to that are like my Shiras, honestly, that make me excited about taking a step further every single day in forcing myself to never question my belonging and what I bring to the table. I think my big time Shira of all is Robin Ennis. She's with Facebook Reality Labs. And here's why, because my background's in diversity and inclusion. And I know how difficult it is day in and day out to make the basis of your company having conversations with leadership about how to weave the thread of inclusion into everything they do. And then for her to transition that into the Facebook Reality Labs and be in the future of VR, that is like my Shira. So Kathy Hackle, I think she's amazing too. And I think she values
Godmother.
diversity. And I think her voice is important in representing and creating space for women leadership in VR. She is my Shira too. Clarama, she was an Oculus Launchpad winner, and I just recently finished Oculus Launchpad, and I thought her work was groundbreaking and is one of the reasons I wanted to apply, because I was like, whoa, if they value her idea, I can show up 100% as myself. Okay. And Denisha Lawrence, claiming space. Listen, I'm all about representation. So to me, these aren't just like leaders in VR. They understand the importance of inclusion. They are promoting, belonging for everyone in the work that they're doing and in the future of tech. So, whew, I get really excited. There needs to be happy hour between all of these people one day.
I'm buying the first round for sure
Okay.
if I can sit at
Right.
that table. That sounds amazing. Uh,
Absolutely.
Yolanda, I want to say thank you. You sort of challenged my morning in the metaverse, where you have very altruistic, idealistic, but we need to go build it opinion about the metaverse that was just a breath of fresh air for me and somebody who has a lot of these conversations about where there's gaps or where we need to grow. And I'm just really inspired by your approach and your vision of the metaverse of a better place, but we have to be responsible in building it. Is there anything that we missed or anything else that you'd like to share with the AWE audience?
I'm just so taken back by what you just said to me that I can't even handle the question.
Eh,
But what you just said is exactly why I want to do what I want to do. So you just made me see that I can have an impact just one conversation at a time.
I, I've played the skeptic, kind of in these interviews a lot because I want to get to where's the value, how do we help people, how do we really make it matter? And that's felt like something that was hard or some sort of charge. And you see it as this North Star and a possibility in a way that was just so refreshing. I really appreciate it.
This is exactly what I'm here to do, is bring this into the tech space along with reverence and an understanding of what it means to be positive contributors into the space. So I do come with that challenge. Show me why why what you do matters. Do you know what I mean, to us, and what impression is it leaving for our grandkids?
Ah, you mentioned wanting just to meet people, to learn, to really engage at the expo. Is there anything in particular that you're hoping to learn more about, dive into, partnerships or folks that you're trying to meet while you're at the
To
expo?
be real, I'm trying to fund my VR company. I am trying to fund the next experience. I have a solid prototype that needs to be completed, so I need to expand it and finish building the baseline structure. And I need to build it for future episodic content, yes, because my VR company does that too. So There is the importance of preserving archives into the future, contracting stories and creating experiences, and then making them available to the people and through education. That's what I'm here to do for those people that want to see VR grow in that way and create an empire at the same time, because there's no judgment in having both. Then I look forward to those that are looking to fund the future of this work, because we are the future of VR. This is the future of XR, this work.
Oh my goodness, there is no better place to wrap that there. Yolanda Barton, founder of Revere XR, the
Yes.
future of VR, and our representative with the AWE 2022 preview for the startups and investors track. Yolanda, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh,
It has been an
it has been a
extreme
pleasure.
pleasure.
I have a friend. Thank you. This was so amazing.